with Brian Williams.
Good evening. Up until just a few minutes ago, this has been a day of attempted damage control at the White House as the Obama administration is facing a rare confluence right now. For them, a very imperfect storm of three big problems at the same time. The federal government's going after reporters' phone records, the IRS targeting certain people and groups because of their politics, and what went on during and after the attack on our consulate in Benghazi in Libya, September 11th of this past year. And in the way only the White House can at least try to move the news agenda with the release of information. Release they did earlier today, a slew of emails from the height of the Benghazi drama, while the president emerged to take on one of the other troubles, the one involving the IRS. He just announced the departure of the boss, the acting IRS commissioner. Here's part of the president's remarks from just minutes ago.
The misconduct that uncovered is inexcusable. It's inexcusable, and Americans are right to be angry about it, and I am angry about it. I will not tolerate this kind of behavior in any agency, but especially in the IRS, given the power that it has and the reach that it has in all of our lives. And as I said earlier, it should not matter what political stripe you're from. The fact of the matter is that the IRS has to operate with absolute integrity.
So this is confusing. Again, three different fronts, hard to explain. We'll try to get through it. Our team members are all in place tonight as we do. Chuck Todd, our chief White House correspondent, political director, happens to be here with us in our New York studios. First things first, what we just witnessed, the president in the East Room, rather formal setting, and displaying some anger on this IRS mess.
Well, and trying to take control of it. You know, the White House looks at these three controversies and politically sees one that they're truly fearful of getting into the public and losing the credibility of the public. That's the IRS. For the reasons the president said, he knows the IRS touches everybody.
Hardly popular to begin with.
That's right. You lose control of this idea that government knows what it's doing on the IRS front, then how does he implement health care? How does he get immigration reform done? This is the one they're most worried about. Benghazi, that's why they think they dumped the emails. They believe that they will that will move on. And on the reporters front, they figure the media is not very popular. They know they got to get on the better side of the media on this, but at the same time, they don't think it's a public problem. The IRS, they think that's a public problem.
Now, on the IRS front, all day long today, Lisa Myers, our senior investigative correspondent, has been working on the story. And Lisa, what have you learned about the components, how this happened, and how long this is going to go on, how deep this might be?
Well, I think this could go on quite a while. First, a great deal of what the IRS initially told us has been proven to be incomplete or in some cases just flat out wrong. You do find genuine outrage among not just Republicans, but Democrats. House Speaker John Boehner today began by saying he believes that laws were broken. He says, my question isn't going to be who's going to resign. My question is who's going to go to jail over this. Now, the IRS continues to blame the targeting of conservatives on a few rogue employees in the Cincinnati office. Now, congressional sources say the now fired IRS commissioner says 2 employees there have been disciplined. But a veteran lawyer told us today that this problem was not limited to Cincinnati, that her clients who were targeted also received letters from California and Washington. The Attorney General today promised Congress a nationwide investigation to see if IRS employees broke the law.
Is your investigation going to go beyond Cincinnati, beyond Ohio? Is it going to be a national investigation?
Yes, it would. The facts will take us wherever they take us. It will not be only one city. We will go wherever the facts lead us. Okay. This is something that we will base, at least we're at the beginning stages, but we're basing it in Washington, and that way we can, I think, have a better impact nationwide.
To date, there are now 4 congressional investigations underway. Tonight, one of the sets of House investigators sent a letter to the IRS asking to question 5 employees. One is a key career employee in Washington who was involved with the Cincinnati office. Campaign records show that in 2008, she donated $4,000 to help elect then Senator Barack Obama, which is not, by the way, Brian, illegal.
Now, Lisa, we keep hearing Cincinnati. Correct me if I'm wrong. And the reason we're going to hear more about this, if you apply for tax-exempt status, your mailing goes to the IRS Cincinnati office. So that's where a lot of this would have happened.
Absolutely. And that is the key office in the IRS system that handles applications for various tax-exempt groups. No matter what letter is attached to their name, most of this goes through the Cincinnati office.
All right. Lisa Myers in our D.C. Bureau. Lisa, thanks. Now to another of these three issues we addressed at the top of the broadcast, and that is what happened at the U.S. consulate in Benghazi, Libya, this past September 11th. As you know, it's become a big political issue back and forth. The White House, late this afternoon, released a slew of emails going over the history within the administration of how this issue should be dealt with publicly. Peter Alexander at the White House has been covering that angle of today's story. Peter, good evening.
Brian, good evening to you. As you note, this was a surprise move late this afternoon. These are the 100 pages of emails that were passed out by the White House trying to put an end to that long simmering dispute of exactly what took place and what they knew at the time when the diplomatic compound, the American compound in Benghazi, was attacked on 9/11. These emails show exchanges between the White House, the CIA, and the State Department as they work to try to prepare those talking points for the House Intelligence Committee, the same talking points that would then be used by UN Ambassador Susan Rice when she went to speak that following Sunday on the Sunday morning news broadcast. Republicans, of course, have criticized the administration for what they describe as scrubbing those talking points to remove, among other things, any references to Al-Qaeda to try to protect the president in what were the final months of the presidential campaign in September of last year. In this afternoon's briefing, the senior administration officials insist that no one had perfect knowledge of exactly what happened at the time and that they didn't want to prejudice the FBI investigation into the events, even though, and let's show you, one CIA email points out, FYI, the FBI says Al-Qaeda was involved and they're pursuing that theory. The final talking points refer only to extremists, which the administration says applies to terrorists. Earlier, there was concern. This email was sent by another CIA official 5 hours earlier. It reads, I know there is a hurry to get this out, but we need to hold it long enough to ascertain whether providing it conflicts with express instructions from other agencies that in light of the criminal investigation, we are not to generate statements with assessments as to who did this, even internally, not to mention for public release. A senior intelligence official maintains that there was no pressure, no outside pressure from the White House or the State Department, and that the analysts were satisfied with everything that was in the final talking points. In addition, the senior administration official says that they shared the same concerns as the State Department and proactively made the changes, some of them handwritten, Brian, by the deputy CIA director, Mike Morrell.
The allegation here is that the talking point was the theme of the election, Al-Qaeda's on the run, and some of this would have interfered with that. Peter Alexander on the North Lawn tonight. Peter, thanks to all of our three correspondents at the top of the broadcast. So from this confluence we've been talking about at the White House, across town, across the river to the Pentagon, to a new revelation that another military service member in charge of dealing with sexual assaults is accused instead of committing them. This time, it's an Army Sergeant First Class at Fort Hood in Texas. The allegations are just the latest in a long string of sexual assault scandals. Has a whole lot of people wondering what's wrong with the culture within the military. Our Pentagon correspondent, Jim Miklaszewski, with us from the Pentagon tonight with more. Jim, good evening.